Hi everyone, we're going to do our goal setting activity today. If you're going to watch along with the video, then all you need is, oh my goodness, all you need is this worksheet for reference. It looks like this, and then it has some boxes down here as well. Hope you can see that one. So if you want to print that out and use it, you can. If you don't have access to a printer, that's cool too. You can just write it down on a piece of paper. It has the same effect. It'll all be the same in the end. But to work on our goals today, we're going to use something called S.M.A.R.T goals. And S.M.A.R.T is an acronym, which means that each letter in the word S.M.A.R.T stands for a different word, so it helps us remember it. And the S in S.M.A.R.T, we're going to start with, stands for specific. So you want your goals to be as descriptive as possible. So you're going to think about who, what, when, where, and how when you talk about what you want to achieve at gymnastics. You also want your goal to be measurable, so how will you know you've achieved your goal? It has to be something that you can see that you've done. You want to make sure your goal is achievable, so you want to make sure it's something that you can actually get done in the amount of time that you have to work with. You want to make sure your goal is relevant, so ask yourself, why am I working on this goal? Is it something that's important for my gymnastics? Why is it important to me? And the T in S.M.A.R.T stands for time-based, so you have to set a time frame for your goal. You have to say, I want to achieve my goal by this day, or I want to achieve my goal after this number of tries or this number of practices. Make sense? So that's our S-M-A-R-T. Specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-based. So there are different types of goals that you can set that are important for gymnastics. So when you think about the stuff that you do at gymnastics, one of the most important things that we work on is our strength. So sometimes we do this in warm-up. We'll do frog jumps to try and get stronger legs. We'll do push-ups to get stronger arms, or we'll do chin holds on bars, try and hold our chin up high over the bar, and that's really good for a pullover. So we do a lot of strength work to try and get bigger muscles so that when we do gymnastics, it's not as much work, right? It's a little bit easier for us. So an example of a strength goal you might write is, I will do a chin hold for 10 seconds on the high bar by the end of the session. Right? The goal is relevant because if you work on a chin hold, it will help your pullover. And if you're working on pullovers, it's good to practice chin holds too. So when we talk about strength goals, we really want to try to focus on goals that will help improve our gymnastics. We can also talk about flexibility goals. We work on flexibility every time we do gymnastics. During our warm-up, we stretch a little bit, we do jumps and leaps. We try and touch our toes to the bar. We do lots of flexibility at gymnastics because it's super important. It's hard to get up to a handstand if you can't do a very good split, right? It's hard to do a back walkover or a back handspring if you can't do a very good bridge yet. So we have to work on these flexibility goals so that eventually we can do something a little bit harder with them. So an example of a flexibility goal that you could set is, I will be able to hold a bridge with my feet flat on the floor, not on my toes, feet flat on the floor, after 2 weeks of stretching. This goal is time-based. You can see because you said after 2 weeks of stretching, that's when I'll have achieved the goal. You know exactly how long you have, or exactly how long you want to take to work on this goal. It's also good when you think about flexibility goals to think about things that might make gymnastics more difficult for you, right? If you can't do a good bridge, then it's really hard to do a good back bend. Or if you can't do your splits or your straddle very well, it's hard to do a good cartwheel. So it's not important to have your splits all the way down to the floor, but if it makes your cartwheel hard, then you need to work on your splits, right? That's when flexibility goals come in. All right, the last one, and the one that's probably easiest to think of examples for, is a skills goal. So that's all the tricks that you learn at gymnastics, right? Everything from a forward roll to a backflip. So all the things that we do on bars, beam, vault, and floor, you can pick from to set a goal on. Now this is where it gets tricky being specific, because you don't want to just say, I want to be able to do this skill. Because what does that mean? If you say, I want to be able to do a pullover, what does that really mean? You do it once and then you can't do it the next time, or you do it on the low bar but you can never do it on the high bar. We need to be specific. It's okay if you only do it once, but then you would say, my goal is to do a pullover each time I go to practice. So one time at practice for the rest of the session. Or you could say, my goal is to do a pullover on the low bar 3 times this session. Well, we have to be specific, right? We can't just say, I want to do it. This is also a good spot to think of your skills in steps. So if you're having trouble thinking of lots of goals, if you are someone who only wants to do one or two things, you say, I want to do a back walkover and I want to do a back up circle on the bars, and there's nothing else you want to work on. That's okay, but there's a ton of steps to do that first, right? You don't just put down, I want to do a back walkover, because before you do back walkover, you have to have a good back bend. And before you have to do a good back bend, we work on good bridges. And in there's also a kickover. Same with, back handsprings. Before you do a good back handspring, we need to be able to hold a really good handstand. We need to have a good bridge. So there's little steps along the way. You can break your goals down. So we want to fill in the steps along the way so that we can see the path to our goal. And this will make sure that our goals are achievable. So something I want you guys to try and stay away from is thinking about moving up to the next level as one of your biggest goals. Because we're not so much focused on what the name of the level is that you're in, what the title of the level is. It's more about how your skills are going, what skills you can and can't do yet, right? So it doesn't matter which skills are grouped into which level. You should have goals based on, I want to get this skill. And if it means you can move up to the next level, that's great. But everything in gymnastics is about progressions and setting the building blocks so that later you can do something harder, or so that later things will be so much easier for you, right? If you can do a handstand on the floor, it'll be so much easier when you go to try it on beam than learning it for the first time on beam. So what we're going to do with the worksheet, which if you have the worksheet, looks like, here we go again. It looks like this again, right? My goals. If you don't have the worksheet, you can write down my goals at the top of your paper. And I want you to write down on this piece of paper 3 long-term goals. So these are 3 goals that are way in the future. It's going to take a few steps to get there. You probably couldn't do it if you tried it for 2 weeks. It might take you a couple months to get there. It might take you the whole session to get there. It might be your goal for next year. And then I want you to write down some short-term goals. So these are things that you can work towards a tiny bit every day, and maybe in 2 weeks it'll be a lot better. Like doing a bridge and working on your shoulder flexibility and your back flexibility, getting your heels to the floor. So flexibility is a good one to fix quickly, a short-term goal. Or maybe you have a hard time keeping your legs straight when you do cartwheels and handstands. So if you say, I'm going to do 10 cartwheels and 10 handstands every day because one of my goals is to have straight legs when I do my cartwheels and I do my handstands, after 2 weeks, that'd be a great short-term goal. So I want you to write 3 of each. So after you figured out your long-term goals and your short-term goals, we are going to go on to 3 specific goals that you want to work on. So you're going to take off of that list of the 6 that you put up here on your big list, off of the big list, you're going to take 3 of them, and we're going to break it down, okay? So you're going to write down the specific goal, whatever that is. Maybe it's, I'll do 10 push-ups in a row. In 2 weeks, I'll be able to do 10 push-ups in a row. You're going to answer some questions about how you're going to meet that goal. So the first thing is, what can I do to reach the goal? What can you do? So right now we're talking about what can I do at home, not so much at practice. So are there any things that you can do by yourself to work on? Is there something that you're doing when you follow along with the gymnastics challenge that is helping you reach this goal? What steps are you going to take to make sure that you meet your goal? Alright, the next thing I want you to write down, it's over here. The next thing I want you to write down, what help do I need? So this is a really important question to ask, especially because we're not at gymnastics right now, and there's no coaches to help you as you're doing it. I can't give you feedback because I can't watch you do it right now. So what help do you need? Do you have all the equipment that you need? Do you need someone to spot you? Do you need a little bit of help for the first couple tries? Do you need someone to record you so you can see how it's going? Maybe if you don't know that your legs are straight or if they're bent, it would be really good for your parents or for your brothers and sisters, grandma, grandpa, neighbors, whoever's around to record it for you so you can see if your knees are bent. So you can ask yourself, what help do I need? how long will it take? So this is really important. If you didn't write it down in your in the longer section, the long-term goals and the short-term goals, if you didn't specify there, it's important when you break your goals down to say, how long will this take? And then you can break it down even, I'm going to put this down, you can break it down even further than that. You can say, well, the whole goal is going to take 2 weeks, but, I'm going to spend the first week, if you're trying to get your legs straight in your cartwheel, I'm going to spend my first week getting really, really comfortable doing cartwheels at home because I don't like doing them without the mats. And I'm going to spend the second week focusing really, really hard on straight legs and pointed toes. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I'll be so confident doing my cartwheels. So if you need to break it down even more, you can do it that way. Why is it important? Why does this goal matter to you? Why does it matter for your gymnastics? Is it something that you need before you can learn a new skill? Do you need to do good shoulder shrugs? When you do a handstand, you push through your shoulders. Do you need to get better at those so that your back handspring can get better? Do you need to work on handstands because you really, really want to do a cartwheel and you just can't balance yet in your cartwheel? Or is it something your coach has asked you to do? Maybe you've been at gymnastics and you hear me when you do your pullovers, you hear me say, pull your chin up to the bar, hold your chin there, and now can you lift your legs up? And you always have a hard time getting your chin up and your legs up, so you're going to do some conditioning to work on it for when you get back to gymnastics. Or maybe it's just something that you want to do. Maybe it's just something you've always wanted to try. And that's a really, really good reason to want to work on it too. That's why we're at gymnastics, right? Is to learn things that we think look really fun and are a challenge to us. So maybe you've never done back handsprings before, or you've always wanted to do a back handspring, and you see that there's back handspring drills to work on. No real back handsprings, we're not doing back handsprings at home. But maybe there's back handspring drills that you think that you could try on the challenge. And you say, I'm going to spend a lot of time working on back handspring drills so that when I get back to practice, all of the shapes are right for back handsprings, my shoulders are strong, my arms are strong, and I'm ready to do a really, really good back handspring at practice when I have a coach again. So setting and then reaching small goals is a really, really good way to keep track of your progress, especially when you feel like you're kind of slowing down a little bit, because I know gymnastics can get really repetitive. You feel like you're doing a bunch of handstands, you feel like you're doing, a bunch of rolls and a bunch of cartwheels, and you're like, why do I need to do this? You got to understand that right now we're setting goals for you in our lesson plans. We're saying they need to do this, this, and this today because in 3 weeks I want them to be able to do a whole different set of things, right? So coaches are setting goals the whole time too. We're setting goals in our lesson plans for you when we think about what we want you to work on in class. But now, since we're not in class, this is a really, really good chance for you guys to take a little bit of control over what you want to work on and what you think is important for your gymnastics. So like I said before, gymnastics, like a lot of things, is about all the building blocks. And then you set goals and you achieve all those building blocks. Once you have them, once you know them, once you can get through the progressions, that's when you move on to bigger, more exciting things, harder skills. So we set goals for the building blocks and all the new skills will follow.